Hi everyone. So this is our first Coach Art baking, and unfortunately fortunately it's a holiday, but unfortunately I don't get to kind of do this in person-ish on Zooming. But anyways, we are going to do our first baking class, and we're going to do a very basic, and I'm going to start with a box of brownie mix. Okay, so we're going to get into that. But before we do, I always make sure and get my my workstation ready. I always have a towel on my shoulder. Some people wear aprons, and that's sort of up to you. But the first thing we do is go over what we need. We're going to have our hot pads because we're going to be using a hot oven. So you want to have hot pads. Protect your hands, being very careful when you're using a hot oven. All right? We have our mixer, hand mixer, with our beaters in, okay? And we only need one pan and not even a big one, all right? And then a spatula. And we use a spatula because we put our ingredients into our mixing bowl, and then we use our mixer to mix them up. But sometimes always actually, you'll get stuff on the side. So during the cooking, or during the, when we're mixing up the batter, I'll stop occasionally and just do the sides here just to make sure everything's really combined. So our spatula and our bowls, we have our mixing cups. So we have 1 cup, 3/4. Usually they're marked. Okay, a half and a 1/4. Okay. Now, just for real quick, we have a 1/4, which is the smallest, and a cup, which is the biggest. Now, 4/4 equals 1 whole. So you have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Okay, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. That's 1 whole. So 4 of these little guys, if I put them in there, would make 1 cup. This is a half a cup. So 2 of these make 1 cup. A half and a half is a whole. Okay. So, and then we always have our measuring spoons, which generally you have a tablespoon, which is bigger than a teaspoon. And we usually have a half a teaspoon and a 1/4 of a teaspoon. Some of them have an 1/8 and in between, but that's what I have. For today, we're going to need, I'm using an 8x8 pan. You can use a 9x9. So you take, the way you know this, you can just look on the bottom, but also if you have a measuring tape, you can measure your own 8x8 or 9x9. Now, you don't have to use a square pan. You could use a round pan. You could even use like the ones you buy that are disposable. They're tin. It doesn't matter. It's just what you choose. Usually brownies are kind of usually in cubes, so this type of pan works best. Okay, for today's lesson, we can use spray oil. We can also use, let me grab it, sorry. Regular cooking oil, which is usually vegetable. It can be canola, it can be sunflower. When we're cooking a recipe like this, we don't want to use olive oil. I use olive oil all the time when I'm like mixing vegetables and things, but I don't use it when I'm baking unless it calls for it. So you want to have some oil. Usually any of these boxed brownie recipes call for usually some type of vegetable oil, eggs, 1 or 2 eggs generally, and maybe some water, and that's about it. Everything else is dehydrated and in here. That's why this is an easy thing to make. All right, I also have my little scooper, so when we finish and we let these cool down a little bit, I use these to pull my brownies out. And then generally, like I said, most of these box brownies call for 1 or 2 eggs generally, so we have 2 eggs, okay? Now, before we start going, I always, what's it called, is preheat your oven. You want the oven hot before you put anything in it, whether it's a baked good or you're doing vegetables or meat. You want the oven preheated. So this calls for an 8x8 inch pan. It calls for 350 degrees. So I'm going to put my oven on 350 degrees, which you can do too. And we'll let that preheat while we're making our recipe, okay? So we have our workstation ready, and you take your box and open it up, alrighty? So we'll do that to start with. And we'll go ahead and take out the ingredients, which is only a bag of this pre-put together stuff. And so it would be flour and sugar. If you made it from scratch, there you would be using cocoa, chocolate. You'd be using some flour. You'd be using some sugar. So they've made it easier for us, and they put it all in here. Okay. Coming up in, I think, our third lesson, we're going to go ahead and be making things from scratch, where we're actually putting the individual flour and sugar in. But for this lesson, we're going to start with this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and use my scissors and carefully open up our bag, and then we're just going to take that and just put it right inside our bowl. Okay, there, empty that out, and then I always just put it right back in the box because this is recyclable, so I want to keep it all together. Now, so we put that in our bowl, and mine calls for 2 tablespoons, I think. Let me see. Put my glasses on real quick. Mine calls for 3 tablespoons of water, a half a cup of vegetable oil, and 2 eggs. So if we go to our spoons, you want to look at your tablespoon, and it is the largest one. It wants 3 of these. So the easiest way for me to do it is I usually take a smaller cup and I fill it with water. And then I come back over to my bowl and I just dip it in and get 1, 2, and 3. Okay, good. Alrighty. And then it says 1/2 cup of oil. So we look at our cups and we look for the 1/2 cup. I'm going to go ahead and use, this is pure canola oil. We do sunflower, vegetable. I have canola here today. So that's 1/2 cup. I pour carefully over the batter so it doesn't spill on my counter all the way out. And I go ahead and put this in the sink so we'll be ready to clean it when we're cooking our brownies. All right. Okay, and then on the back of our recipe, it calls for 2 eggs. All right. Now, if you're not used to cracking eggs, you want to probably start by cracking over a bowl or a cup and not directly into your bowl, because if you're not used to it, you might get some egg shell in there. You don't want to do that. So just to be careful, you can go ahead and crack your egg, and I open it up into a cup. Okay, and I'll do the same with this one. I'm going to crack it. Put your fingers right at the crack, gently, don't squeeze in, squeeze just a tad and pull away from each other, and the egg comes straight out. And we'll put these in our trash also, okay? And then I take that and go ahead and put it into my bowl, and I put this in the sink to clean it. All right, now we're going to take our mixer. Now, when you're mixing, you want to be careful because when you turn it on, they whirl around. And you don't want to get your fingers caught in there because that won't feel good, right? So you don't want your hands near there. The other thing is when you're mixing, the bowl stays on your counter. Don't be holding it like this. That could cause a mess. You could spill it. These could go up. So put your bowl on the counter. You're going to put your mixer into the bowl, and don't pull it back out until it's off. Once it's in, hold it down and turn it on slow, medium. Don't go right away to fast because some of the dry stuff could fly out. The other thing is when you are mixing, don't pull this out while it's mixing. You need to turn it off because all that batter will go flying around your counter in your room. I mean, in your kitchen. So you don't want that. That'll just make a mess. So we're going to go ahead. Our bowl is on the counter, straight in on low, and go ahead and turn it on. Okay, and we just mix for a while. See if I can get that down, you can see. See it mixing up there? There you go. Good. And we just go ahead, like I said, you move around. I don't lift my bowl. I move my blades. And as soon as you start getting all the dry mixture combined and it starts looking wet, then you can turn it up a little bit. We don't need to do it too much. I think generally it says stir, and it just says until well blended. You don't have to do it a lot. If you could easily do this by hand too if you do not have a mixer. It's just easier with a mixer. Okay. Okay. So mine's mixed up, but like I said, what I like to do in the middle of it, I like to take my spatula and go around the sides and make sure that all the dry stuff from the bottom and the side is all combined into the middle. Good. What I do is I go around and I actually, again, still keep my bowl on the ground, on the counter. I go ahead and push it and just go around. Now, what I do is I take my spatula and clean it off on my blades, okay, on my beaters, okay? And that goes down. And we're just gonna do a little bit more just to make sure it's really incorporated. Okay, what I do to clean the batter off of the beaters, I kind of lift the bowl, and I push a lot of the batter to the one side or the other, and then I just keep the beaters really low, but not in the mixture, and I turn it on kind of high, and all that stuff just sort of flies off. But again, you're still keeping it in the bowl so the batter doesn't fly off into your counter. Okay, so then I take that out, I release my beaters, and put them in the sink to wash. All right, so on these, the directions, it will tell you the size pan. You can see what you're going to use. It'll tell you the heat for that pan. And what they ask you to do is they want you to prepare the pan, which means just grease the bottom, lightly cover the bottom of the pan with cooking oil, okay? So what I do, because I have a spray, and this is how little, it's just a tad. And it's just the bottom, not the sides, okay? Now, if you do not have the spray, you can take your oil and put a little bit on a paper towel and rub the bottom of your pan, or you can take butter and put a little bit on here and rub it on your pan, okay? So, there we go. Okay, now what this says, put my glasses on again. So this says for an 8x8, we're gonna put the temperature, actually for a smaller one, we're gonna put it to 325. Again, you need to read the back and decide what size pan you're using, and then it'll tell you the baking temperature and the baking time. So for an 8x8, which this is, it says 325 for 50 minutes, okay? Okay, very good. Good. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and, using our spatula, we're going to take the batter out and pour it into the pan. Okay. And I just use my spatula. See, I go all the way around the pan and I just push it all in there. I want to get it all out, get that good chocolate batter in there so we have even more brownies than before here. Okay, so we put it in there, good. And again, I just sort of clean off the spatula on the side of the pan and get as much as I can out of there. Good. All right. And we put this in the sink so it'll be ready to wash. Okay. So we have our batter in our pan, okay? And we just sort of move it a little bit, kind of shake it and get it all evened out. All right, and we're checking. So my oven is ready to go. So I'm gonna put mine in the oven and set my timer. Now it says 50 minutes. What I generally do because I've been baking and cooking for so long, I like to check. I generally might not cook it quite as long as they say. So I'm going to go ahead and put maybe, mine said cook 50 minutes. So I'm going to put about 45 minutes on my timer, and then I'll check it then and see what I think, if I think it's ready or not. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the oven and set my timer for 45 minutes, and we're good to go. Good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break. No, actually we're not. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do the dishes. Okay, so you always want to clean your kitchen up. You don't want to leave a messy kitchen. And a lot of people kind of cook and cook and cook, and they just build up more and more dishes. I don't like to do that. I like to clean as I go, whether it's baking or whether it's cooking a whole dinner. So that's up to you, but the main point is you don't want to leave a dirty kitchen for your mom, your dad, anyone living in the house with you. So we're always going to use, of course, carefully warm water. And anytime you use oil, you really do have to use soap and warm water. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get it clean because oil is kind of slimy and sticky. So we're going to go ahead and use some warm water and wash our dishes off. There we go. And we have our beaters. Want to get those nice and clean for the next time you use them. You have to get all the stuff inside and underneath there. Looks good. And our pan. Remember to use soap and warm water. There we go. Alrighty. So this is pretty nice. Because actually to make some really yummy brownies, it's really not much of a mess, and it doesn't take that long, assuming that you get a box of store-bought, brownie mix. So I'm going to go ahead and just dry everything that we've used today, our measuring cups, and our spatula, our bowl, and put it all away, of course. Good. Perfect. And you'll be ready to go for your next baking session. So, and our beaters. Good. Now, when you have a boxed baking goodie you're making, like this, I didn't add anything, but if you wanted to add, I love nuts, but I didn't add them today, but if you wanted to add like nuts to them, or you wanted to add chocolate chips, if you wanted to add even M&Ms or white chocolate chips, you guys can add whatever you want. And I would say in a recipe like this, maybe half a cup to a cup, depending on how much you like it. And what you would do is when it's all mixed up, just go ahead and put your extra, what you want to put in, and go ahead and just mix it in, and it'll just cook inside, and they're delicious that way. Good. All right, so we're gonna take a break because that has to cook. Take a little breather, and then we'll come on back when they're done and take them out of the oven and show you how to cut them up, and be careful, again, go into the oven with that hot oven. Okay?